What up, everybody? Welcome to The Sweat, presented by DraftKings. Good morning to everyone except the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have officially been eliminated from the playoff contention. And once again, breaking America's heart. Coming up, who to stuff inside your NBA lineups tonight. We're breaking out our crystal balls to discuss a smorgasbord of NHL futures bets because there are 0 games tonight on the ice. Plus, who our analysts think should be steering your showdown ship for Rams-Cardinals on Monday Night Football. But first, come on, let's overreact to what went down yesterday around the NFL. It's a Monday edition of NFL Hangover with DraftKings contributors Jeff Ulrich, Pierce Dietrich, Julian Edlow in the house. Gentlemen, the Bucs get the walk-off overtime win against the Bills. One of the most hyped teams entering this season is now on the verge of collapsing. One of 5 teams with a 7-6 record, barely hanging on to the 7th and final playoff spot there in the AFC. But that second half comeback, it has you confident, taking their minus 300 odds to make the playoffs, Jeff. Is that an overreaction?
I mean, I don't think it's an overreaction to be confident that the Bills will still make the playoffs. I think it's an overreaction to take them at minus 300 to make the playoffs. I mean, this is a team that has lost to Jacksonville. So we know that, like, the Bills aren't the dominant force that they were last year. And really, I don't know how shocked we should be. I mean, the Bills were a young team. You know, they're coming off like an almost dream season where they made this huge jump, and it's always hard to follow up on those years. So at the same time, like, I think the Bills will make the playoffs. I just don't want to bet it at minus 300. You're correct in saying I think that the comeback, the fact that the Bills were able to score some points against the tough Buccaneers defense, I think that will give them confidence going forward. But, man, like, this is a dogfight they're in now. I mean, there are multiple teams who, if they get hot and the Bills put up one more stinker loss, this team is done. So for this year anyways, no, I wouldn't take this bet, but I still would. I still think the Bills will get there.
Okay, Pierce, good news is 3 of their last 4 games come at home against teams with losing records, but the bad news is that other game comes in New England.
That's fine. 3-1 will be good enough. They could possibly go 4-0 as well. It's only really an overreaction if you thought this was an elite top-tier team. And we talked about this the last couple of weeks. This defense was highly overrated because they played an easy schedule. They were able to get up on teams by several touchdown scores, and then they made their opponents play one-dimensionally, and they won those games. In games that they had to play close and had to defend against the pass and the run, well, they've lost all of those games. This defense is just not as good as people thought. Now that they realize it's just an okay defense, and then with that just okay defense, you have a one-dimensional offense. They can't run the ball. They gave the ball to the running backs 7 times yesterday. Now with their schedule, they're probably going to be able to make that work. But come January and February, if you don't have a run game and you have a defense that's borderline suspect, I mean, Josh Allen's going to have to be just run completely hot and perfect, and I don't see that happening.
Yeah, and Jules, Pierce makes a good point here. I mean, Allen's in a walking boot now, too. He hasn't been consistent. The running game's disappeared, and the defense has lacked a bite at times despite the strength overall.
Yeah, look, the Bills aren't as good as we thought they were coming into the year or as they were early in the year when they were winning these games. They had a really soft schedule, and eventually some bad teams snuck up on them. The prime example being not scoring a touchdown and losing to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So it's a high, and they can also win in Kansas City on Sunday Night Football, although that was when the Chiefs were still kind of getting things together. So this is about as low floor, high ceiling of a team as you could ask for. Like, they could come undone and miss the playoffs. They could conceivably win the AFC. I don't think they will. But yeah, the bottom line is, I'm like Jeff said, they're minus 300 to make the playoffs. Yes, I think they're going to make the playoffs. No, I'm not confident enough to lay minus 300. There's really nothing you can bet for the Bills right now in the futures market. I don't want to bet them to miss the playoffs either. The division with that loss, big game coming up for the Patriots on Saturday night in Indy, but the division is going to be really tough for Buffalo to get, especially with that last game being in Foxborough. So I'm just passing on everything Bills.
All right, so then now you have the Ravens as well, guys. The Ravens have fallen behind the Pats, the Titans, and the Chiefs, who are all 9-4 after Week 14. And so they lost to the Browns, right, without Lamar Jackson. And the Bengals failed to capitalize on it by losing to the 49ers in overtime. The Ravens still lead the division, yes, and remain favorites, yes, to win it at plus 165. But since we're overreacting here, the injuries are just too much to overcome. And Baltimore will miss the playoffs, Pierce. Is that an overreaction?
No, I've been saying this for weeks, and I think now people are probably coming along to my side that this isn't an overreaction anymore. It really, if you look at the beginning of the season, they lost an offensive lineman coming in. They lost their 2-star running backs and also lost Ingram coming in. And, they win a couple nail biters and get these lucky wins at the beginning of the season, and it misleads people, and people think that, oh, well, this Ravens team is good. Well, regression has come. It's come hard. And on top of that, they've got even more injuries. So even before the latest, slate of injuries, they weren't a very good team. They've got a pretty tough schedule moving forward. In their defense, though, there aren't very many good teams in the AFC. Suddenly, the Titans are now back into the conversation after an unremarkable win yesterday against Jacksonville for being one of the better teams in the AFC. I don't like this Baltimore team. They could easily go 0-4 to close the season.
Yeah, they really could. I'm looking at their schedule now here, Jules. Ravens have 2 brutal home games left against elite NFC opponents. That's going to be the Packers and the Rams. They also have to try to avenge that home loss to Cincinnati and a road loss to Pittsburgh here. So is it an overreaction in your eyes to say that the Ravens could just miss the playoffs?
I mean, at where we are now, they certainly could miss it. And they have a really tough schedule remaining. And of course, there's a reason it's off the board right now. Lamar Jackson didn't return with an ankle injury on Sunday, which if it's Tyler Huntley down the stretch going against 2 playoff contenders, divisional playoff contenders in the AFC, and 2 NFC contenders to win the entire conference, it's probably not going to go very well. So yeah, I'll go against everything Ravens right now, especially with Jackson's status. I think the better bet for this division that is on the board, you can get Cleveland at even money just to make the playoffs. We're not even talking division. So they're 6-point favorites at home on Saturday against the Raiders. They have a similar schedule to close things out to Baltimore in the games after that. But that includes either overtaking Baltimore for the division or just getting one of those wild card spots. I think the Browns to kind of rally late at even money to make the playoffs is the way to go.
I mean, Jeff, 2-2, maybe looking like the best case finishing scenario for Baltimore, a 10-7 final record here.
Yeah, absolute best case, man. I mean, probably no Lamar Jackson next week versus the Packers. That's a loss. Yeah, I think it really comes down to the week after that. The Ravens season is going to be on the line in week 16 against the Bengals. I mean, I think that's it, because after the Bengals, they play the Rams. And then they got the Steelers at home to finish off. That's fine. But if you go 0-3 versus the Packers, Bengals, and Rams, I mean, that's probably it. And the Bengals will also obviously have them twice for the division. So I think it's all going to come down to that game, because I don't see them eking out next week, especially even if Lamar plays, not going to be 100%. Pierce and I have said this about the Ravens all year. They are a team getting by with the special abilities of 2 players, Justin Tucker and Lamar Jackson. And now Lamar Jackson isn't going to be at 100% down the stretch. This is a team you fade 100%. I'd wait and as soon as that thing gets back on the board to make the playoffs, I'd personally be betting it the other way.
Okay, let's go over to the Chiefs now. The Chiefs at the blowout victory, second one in 3-4 weeks against the Raiders, and have quietly won 6 straight games. The boys are buzzing again in Kansas City. All right, you love their plus 225 odds to win the conference and get the number 1 seed at plus 175, Julian.
It is a good time to back Kansas City in the futures market. You're not getting as good a price as you were when this hot streak started, but we also kind of needed to see what we've seen from them to get that confidence. They deserve to be favored over the Patriots. The Patriots are on a great run. They've gotten fortunate along the way, and they have a couple of tough games coming up at Indy on Saturday night, and then the divisional game against Buffalo. So Kansas City's got a big game as well, favored Thursday night in LA. But just kind of go back to the preseason expectation. Like, the Patriots are peaking right now. They're a little higher than we thought they would be. They're going to be a playoff threat, but probably not the favorite in the AFC. Mahomes, just because of a bad start to the season with 5 brand new offensive linemen, got overlooked a little bit. The AFC belongs to the Chiefs. I'm not saying that nobody can beat them, but they deserve to be favored, and they're the best bet in the AFC.
Jeff, do you agree it's a good time to back the Chiefs right now?
No, I don't really want to back the Chiefs right now. They're just too low. I think Julian's right. Like, the time to do it was 2 or 3 weeks ago. Look, the Chiefs are clearly playing better, but let's just hold back a little bit. They've beaten the Packers without Aaron Rodgers. They've beaten the Raiders twice, and they beat the Broncos. Whoop-de-woo. They have one good win against the Cowboys, and that was purely based on their defense. Their offense did nothing in that game. I still have concerns about this team. Mainly just offensively, if they're going to be able to get it together. And I think they're very ripe. We've seen them ripe to be defeated in the playoffs. We've seen them lose to multiple AFC contenders already. The Titans, the Bills. Even if you're not high on the Bills, man, the Titans are going to get it together. They're going to get some players back. You know, there's other teams playing well too in other conferences. Like the Browns have an elite defensive unit. I think they could give the Chiefs problems. I don't want to take the Chiefs in the futures. Again, I'll go back to my team. They're getting disrespected again. I think if you're looking at the AFC conference, you go down the board and you look at the Tennessee Titans again. They're in a good spot to get the division. They're plus 800. People aren't talking about them. That's the team I'd want to get on as far as AFC conference goes right now.
Okay, but Pierce, I believe before, like early in the season when this team was struggling, there was offensive struggles, yes, but that defense was terrible. Right now, this 6-game win streak, it's a group that's given up under 11 points per game on the defensive side.
Yeah, we got to look a little bit closer, kind of like with Julian Edlow looking at the offensive line issues. Well, they've fixed a lot of those offensive line issues. The running backs are healthy for Kansas City. But as you pointed out, the defense is the real story here. Now, before we talk about defense, Mahomes, yeah, has he been a little less sharp? But, yeah, he hasn't had a run game. He doesn't have an offensive line. Well, that's all improved. And really, if you look at his bad pass percentage or even his incompletion rate, it's not very much different than previous seasons. It's just the bad breaks were going in the other direction. And the bigger issue, though, is this defense has held teams to single digits in the last 3 games. Last 6 games, they've held opponents to 17 or fewer. You can go back even further, 13 points to Washington. Yes, they gave up 27 to Tennessee, but in that game, the offense was absolutely terrible. You look closer, and you'll see that Derrick Henry only had 86 yards on 29 carries in that game. This Kansas City defense is for real, and Jeff is completely disrespecting this defense. Like, how can you overlook that? If Kansas City's defense is playing well, they're a Super Bowl favorite.
Jeff?
They're already the favorites, though. They're the favorite. They can't get any more favoriter because they're the So I just don't want to.
Well, I don't, guys. We got to look out. We got to look out for the Lions here. Let's be honest.
Oh my God! Stop that! Stop that! Do not get Pierce all fired up on the Lions right now. The Chargers, guys. The Chargers do host the Chiefs on Thursday night with a chance to sweep KC in the season series and assume first place in the AFC West. LA is plus 200 for the division, plus 1,000 for the conference here. What's your interest level in those bets, Jeff?
It's pretty low. I mean, look, the Chargers they're a cool team. Like, people like to like them. They got nice uniforms. They got a quarterback who's cool looking. I mean, he's out there slinging it. He's got long hair. He fits in with the LA lifestyle.
Oh, yeah.
But, like, realistically, this team is a little like more like material than it is substance behind it. I mean, their big signature win is beating the Chiefs when the Chiefs were terrible, like earlier in the year. I mean, it's not that impressive what they've done this year. Their offense is definitely could get hot, and they could end up like winning a shootout at some point in the playoffs. But I don't want to bet this team to win like 3 games in the playoffs. I just don't think the defense is going to hold up. You can run the ball on the Chargers, and I mean we've seen their offense, make some mistakes. So they're a nice team. It's a nice story. I think the Chargers will keep building, but like for this year, I'm not really interested in their futures at all.
Okay, and then Pierce, they're also minus 140 for a wild card seed, minus 500 to make the playoffs.
Jeff's infatuation with the Chargers is making me a little bit uncomfortable. They should probably get a room, but yeah, they're gonna be fine. It's just them or Denver. Both we can count out the Raiders. The Raiders they lost their they lost their head coach, an offensive-minded coach. They lost their best receiver. Their tight end hasn't played in weeks. So right off the Raiders, it comes down to Denver and the Chargers. They play each other head-to-head. They both are going to lose to Kansas City. They'll both win against the Raiders. And then you look at the remaining game, and the Denver gets Cincinnati, whereas the Chargers get Houston. So it's a clear advantage. And I agree with everything that Jeff said. The Chargers look like a cool, fun team, but it's a cool, fun team's awesome if you're collecting trading cards. If you're trying to win football games, it's a different story.
You sound so defeated when you have to admit that you agree with Jeff on something.
Oh, I know. It's horrible, isn't it?
He's like, yeah, I kind of agree with Jeff.
5 years I've been dealing with this, at least.
Jules Herbert continues to play like a potential MVP here, and the Bolts gained a bit of breathing room on other potential wild card entries on Sunday.
Yeah, the Chargers are fine. They should make the playoffs. They should be one of the wild card teams. I said on the Sweat that they weren't a bad bet to miss the playoffs a couple weeks ago before that Bengals game. I thought they were going to lose. Now Jamar Chase catches that ball. Joe Mixon doesn't have a fumble 6. Maybe that game goes a little different, but the Chargers are in a good spot now to get a wild card team. They're not winning the division. One of the bigger future bets I wrote up in my best bets article during the season was right before the Dallas game. Kansas City was a pick'em against the field in the division. They were minus 110 to win the AFC West. That was, we just talked about times to bounce on Kansas City in the futures market. That wasn't a long-term future, but division, that was the time. So I think Kansas City is going to get revenge on Thursday Night Football. I think it'll be a pro-Chiefs crowd probably. Yeah. And the way the Chiefs are playing defense right now, short answer is give me the Chiefs on Thursday night and give me the Chiefs in the division. Chargers very likely to get a wild card spot.
Yeah, they're 3 of their last 4 games here. So Chiefs, Broncos, Raiders. They got 3 division games to go. They got the Texans squeezing there as well. Pierce, were you the ones who were calling the Chargers a fraud like a couple weeks ago too, right?
I call everybody a fraud.
Yeah, that's true. That is your go-to. Like
that's the Lions. The Lions.
The Lions are the only team that's for real.
Non-fraud.
Absolutely.
Pierce is to fraud as Steve Buchanan is to coward. All right, the wild card race in the NFC is an absolute gong show here, dudes. There's a 5-way tie for the final spot with 2 other teams 1 game back of that crowd. Saints, Vikings, Falcons all get a Week 14 win to improve to 6-7. Eagles were on a bye. Washington falling to 6-7. Whose odds do you like here to make the playoffs, Pierce?
Give me the Eagles. They had the bye week to prepare for Washington, and not only are they going to face Washington, they're going to play Washington twice in the next 3 weeks. It gives them almost a whole month to prepare specifically for Washington. You win both these games, you leapfrog Washington, you have the tiebreaker, looks pretty good. Washington's dealing with a bunch of injuries. I think it's finally catching up with them. I know that they battled back yesterday against Dallas, but Dallas was missing several offensive linemen, and we know last year one of the problems that Dallas runs into is when their offensive linemen are out. They're terrible. We've already seen that this season. So with Washington battling back a little bit yesterday, I just don't believe in this team, and especially if Kyle Allen's going to be the quarterback, I would much rather go with Philadelphia having kind of a preferential schedule if you look at the way this thing plays out.
Jules, I think Atlanta among this group has the longest odds at plus 500.
Yeah, as they should. The Falcons aren't very good. None of these teams are all that good. But somebody's going to make it. I don't hate going with Pierce with the Eagles. They kind of have, like we said, Minshew gave Jalen Hurts kind of the extended bye, and they have 2 games against the same team who finally came undone and got a loss, so that could help for those games. I kind of want to go with the Minnesota Vikings, but number 1, they're I think they're the shortest odds, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I got 200
the shortest odds, and you're backing Kirk Cousins as kind of a favorite, and Kirk Cousins just never seems to do it. I'm going to go Eagles here by default, but whoever this team is that gets in and plays whatever it is, the Bucs, the Rams, good night.
All right, so hope is alive for the Vikings, Jeff. Speaking of Kirk Cousins' stand here. If it wasn't for that Week 13 loss at Detroit, they're probably the 7th seed right now.
Probably, and therein too is the problem with the Minnesota Vikings. They will let you down when you least expect it, or maybe when you should most expect it. But the Vikings' schedule is the toughest. They have the Rams and the Packers, and both those teams have winning records, so I don't think we should expect W's from Kirk Cousins there. And then they play the Bears twice, and division games. I mean, the Bears going to be marching out Justin Fields probably, who's getting a lot more confident. Those are not going to be easy games for them to win. They're probably going to split them. I just don't think it's going to get there for the Vikings personally. The Eagles have the best setup for the schedule, and I agree with Pierce. And I actually think the Eagles might just be the slightly better team. Like Washington has run hot lately, but they made me look bad last week against Dallas. And I think that the Eagles, coming off the bye, the key thing here, they play Washington twice, but they also have Dallas in week 17 or week 18. Dallas is probably going to be resting players there. That could just be almost a bye week. So I think the schedule sets up well for the Eagles. I think that they are sneakily maybe even a little bit better than Washington. I like getting on them here because this team has kind of defied expectations, and you can get them at longer odds. So, give me the Eagles as well for the team to grab that last one.
Incredibly, 26 of the league's 32 teams are either in a playoff spot or within 2 games of a playoff spot. So the next 4 weeks here, guys, is going to get quite spicy. Could get quite meaty, if you know what I mean. All right, you 3 hang out. We're going to talk Monday Night Football Showdown picks and best bets coming up right after we look into the future around the NHL. All right, everybody. We are back now to talk about hockey. There was supposed to be one game tonight, but the Blackhawks game tonight was postponed due to a COVID outbreak on the Calgary Flames. So we're going to do something else right now. Good morning. Welcome back to DraftKings contributor Jeff Ulrich, RotoWire's Paul Bruno. We're going to do NFL Seeing the Future. Again, 0 games tonight. Let's take a look at NFL futures bets with about 2/3 of the season here to go. Connor McDavid and his teammate Leon Draisaitl, the leading point scorers and top favorites for the Hart Trophy. McDavid's at plus 150, Draisaitl at plus 300. Still at plus money here. Do you like one of these Oilers, Paul?
You know what? I hate to disappoint Jeff, but I think Oilers fans, himself included, realize the club is still a little bit flawed with weak goaltending and defensive issues. They're currently 14th in the overall standings, so I have a little bit of trouble picking a guy from a team that low in the overall standings as the MVP. I'm more likely to bet on the Great Eight at the Washington Capitals. They're going to be at the top of the standings when it's all said and done. And I can imagine Ovechkin staying in the scoring race as well as being among the top point getters and goal scorers. So I think you got to make a great case for a guy who will be a sentimental favorite as well. And if that's not to your taste, I think the same thing applies to the Leafs Austin Matthews, particularly if he passes Draisaitl and Ovi in the race for top scorer in the league on a stingier and stronger Toronto Maple Leafs club. I bet on 34, and his price is set at $1,400 right now.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Ovi because, Jeff, you made me think like those two could split the votes as many teammates do, and Ovechkin at plus 750 could bring a little better value to the table, right?
Yeah, look, I mean, everything Paul said is correct about the Oilers players this year. It's tough to get on them at these odds right now, just because I think the Oilers, as a lot of people probably who watch hockey, if you're not shocked to see them regress a little bit. Their defense really hasn't been that good all year. They got some hot goaltending at good times, but now that goaltending is dried up and Mike Smith's still out, and they need to address that at some point this year. But I think the bigger thing here is, and Paul touched on it, if Austin Matthews catches these guys in the scoring race, let's not forget, like, he missed games at the start of the year. I mean, this would be a pretty big story. And I think that with how well Toronto is playing as a team, I mean, I think that the media, especially with him playing in a big market, would be more than happy to give him the MVP. Let's not forget Connor McDavid, already multiple in the bag. We've seen this in other sports with guys like Patrick Mahomes. Once they get a couple, sometimes, they'll just give another guy a chance for a year. And I think if Matthews does catch these guys in the scoring race, that's going to really open up the door for him to come and snatch this trophy. And I like taking him at plus 1,400, like double the odds of Ovi. I think Ovi definitely has a little bit of value there, but I just take a shot with Austin Matthews right now. He's playing really well. The Leafs are playing well. They're going to be up there in the standings. They're a solid team from top to bottom, and those are way bigger odds than I thought you'd be getting on Austin Matthews right now today. So,
Jeff, whose odds do you like at this point for the Vezina? I'm looking here. Vasilevsky, the favorite right now, at plus 500.
I mean, look, betting goalies at any time of the year in futures is kind of crazy because, like, these guys can just go on hot streaks. And they can, at the same time, they can let in 2 7-goal games, and it's like, wow, why did I bet this guy? So the Vezina one is always a little crazy, but I think Igor Shesterkin is just having a phenomenal year, and I think he's just a phenomenal goalie. This is a player who I think is more than capable of keeping up his pace through the year. He's been carrying the Rangers. If you look at the statistics, the Rangers offensively really have not been that good. They're not doing it on special teams or anything crazy like that. It's Shesterkin. I think that at plus 750. Again, it's almost the same argument from the MVP award. Vasilevsky, guy who's done it before, been there before. Shesterkin, kind of the new face. I could see him getting the edge, especially with him being in a big market. So I don't mind those odds at plus 750. And I think you also got to take a look at Jakob Markstrom at plus 1,200 too, putting up a phenomenal year. But I'll go with Shesterkin as my top pick right now for the futures.
Yeah, he's tied for the best save percentage in the league. Doesn't have the strongest team in front of him either. What about you, Paul?
You know what? Everything that Jeff said is true. I want you to send the tape of the Austin Matthews thing to AJ, though, for me. I said at the start of the season that Jacob Markstrom would be my choice, and he's firmly in the mix, like Jeff said, with a 194 goals against and a 933 save percentage. But there's a bunch of other guys that merit consideration as well. Let's call Vasilevsky the benchmark in both categories and as a top candidate for the Vezina. Jack Campbell and Tristan Jarry have better numbers than him right now, and the same can be said for Freddie Anderson of the Hurricanes. He's not even listed on your DraftKings sportsbook as one of the favorites among the goaltenders. I guess you put him in the field at plus 1,200, but Jack Campbell at plus 800, Tristan Jarry at 2,500. Their numbers are better than Vasilevsky right now. So there's a whole range of chances for a goaltending expert like me to say there's 6 or 7 candidates that are in the mix here.
Yeah, no, go back to Markstrom real quick. I'm looking at the Flames are allowing the fewest goals per 60 minutes this season. He's obviously a large part of that is because of his play. But as we often have to do here on the Sweat, we got to remind Jeff, hey, defensemen are people too. They even have their own award, Jeff. So whose odds do you like for the Norris right now? I know this could be, if you need another minute to do some research here, let me know. I can go to Paul first. I was going to let you take it away.
I thought they were just statues standing on the back end, that you had to like deke around. I didn't know. I mean, it's new information for me. For the Norris Trophy, I wouldn't stray too far from the top of the board. Cale Makar is having a fantastic year. Obviously, like just the goal scoring rate is unbelievable. The Colorado offense is going to have to keep scoring because they haven't really been able to stop people on defense like they have been over the last couple of years. Their goaltending isn't that good. And I think Makar has just hit another level this year. And, you look at the defenseman behind him. I mean, some of these guys are having solid years too. I think Roman Josi is definitely a little bit interesting at plus 1,000. I mean, the Nashville Predators certainly been better on offense and just a better team than people realize. So that's the other guy I think I would consider. But I think Makar is in a very solid spot. I'm actually surprised to see him only at plus 425 right now in the DraftKings Sports. But I think that this were another award with a little bit more recognition, like the MVP or something. I think Makar would be closer to plus 200. I think because this is more of I don't want to say an obscure award, but people probably aren't rushing to look at the defenseman odds. I think Makar is a very good value at plus 425. I think he's firmly in the driver's seat for this award just based on his offensive capabilities. And again, I just don't see too many guys who are going to be capable of overtaking him. I think Josie is the only one who I think is kind of matching him in offensive production. But even him, if you look at the numbers, like Makar is clearly superior. So I just go to the top of the board here with the Colorado guy. Yeah,
Josie winning the Norris a couple seasons ago and is bouncing back big time after the worst year of his 10-year career last season. Paul, who stands out to you here for the Norris?
You know what? For me, there's a 6-pack of candidates when you consider the leading point getters between 24 and 29 points overall. But when you look at the goal scoring category, Makar has 12, and that's 3 ahead of anybody else in the league. So if that lead grows among the goal scoring aspect, never mind the points, I think Makar has already made a great case as being one of the premier defensemen in the league. But it's all about the goal scoring, and I think he's an outstanding bet at plus 425, like Jeff said. But for me, another strong candidate, maybe the second best, is Aaron Ekblad, who would be my second favorite because he's the top guy on a Florida club that's going to contend for the President's Trophy. And he's doing it at both ends of the ice with a plus 19 to go with his 24 points today.
All right, dudes, running a little tight on time. Let's pick up the pace a little bit on these last two. Panthers, yes, you heard that right. Panthers are favorites in the East right now at plus 400, ahead of the Lightning, who obviously have the Stanley Cup pedigree. Who's your favorite bet right now for the Eastern Conference winner, Paul?
I think the Panthers are legit, and they've been without their captain for 11 games right now. Barkov will be back soon, and I think I like their depth more than any other team in the East right now. I would rate the Caps as the second best club, boasting similar depth assets across the board.
Jeff?
Yeah, I think there's a clear divide between the top 3 teams in the East and the last, but I do like the Panthers the best right now too. And realistically, plus 400, plus 450, it's not a big divide between the top 3 teams. I think if you're looking to go a little bit further down the board, I do think the New York Rangers, like I said, they're just getting such good goaltending. If that offense just clicks a little bit, plus 1,100 is an interesting bet there.
All right, Ulrich, get us out of here with this. Which team's odds do you like for the Western Conference winner?
Yeah, Western Conference definitely like a little bit more wide open. I think you can look down the board a little bit more. I'm gonna lean with the Dallas Stars at plus 1,400. It's the team that I just like their depth up and down, and they've gotten really good goaltending late. And I think this is a conference where you can go down the board. So I think Dallas Stars at plus 1,400 is a team I could get behind at bigger odds.
Paul, who do you like as the best in the West?
I like the same 2 clubs that dominated the West last season. That means the Golden Knights and Avalanche, I think, are on a collision course against. They have the most explosive offenses that will continue to outscore opposition most nights, and they'll have enough defense and in net to give them a similar edge against most of the other top clubs on the left side of the map. I really want to see this matchup again in the postseason. Don't you guys?
Yeah, dude,
Sure.
Sign me up, man. I wish we had a game tonight, but we don't. Which is why we just talked about NHL futures, which that segment is now done. Paul, adios, Bermigo. Jeff, hang out. Need you for some Monday Night Football Showdown picks and bets right after this break. Tonight, Monday night, the Rams are aiming to close their deficit in the NFC West standings when they visit first place Arizona. DraftKings contributor Jeff Ulrich is back. Third straight segment for you, dude. Wow. Pierce Dietrich. Matt Meiselman's here for the first time today. Let's go. We need some showdown advice with some sportsbook love sprinkled in. Matty, you're new here. Favorite captain play for tonight, DFS showdowns?
This is an unusual game, I think, because we have so many good choices. Like, typically there's one or two guys where it's like, these are the best players in the game. And if you're picking someone else, you're going more off the board with like a lower projecting guy. But with Murray and Stafford and Kupp, and then even Sony Michelle, like, I think that there's pretty much four guys who everyone is going to kind of gravitate towards. I think that going off the board and taking DeAndre Hopkins is viable. But I think my preferred choice is just to take Kyler Murray, because I think what's going to happen is most of the Rams are going to be really popular. And I think you can get lower ownership on some supplementary Cardinals players, but I think I'd rather just play all those guys in the flex, like Hopkins, maybe Christian Kirk, and just play Kyler at captain. So I think you can still make the lineup that is relatively unique without getting too crazy, because this may not be the game to go off the board. I think you do maybe need one of these four guys who just look so much better than the rest of the game. So Murray is probably my choice, just because I think the Cardinals side of the game sets up better than the Rams side of the game.
I mean, Jeff, after a 3-game absence there, he reminded us just how explosive of a scorer he could be. North of 30 DK fantasy points, and that was with just 123 passing yards.
Yeah, he threw the ball 15 times his last time out, obviously, but, rushed the ball for, I believe it was a season high, maybe 59 yards. I kind of agree. Like, I think Kyler is who you should be captaining. I think you should swallow that shock. It's absolutely fine. There's not too many players like Kyler Murray in the NFL. And I don't even know if the ownership will necessarily get to the point that it should on Kyler Murray in this game, because there are so many other fancy options with Kupp, Stafford. People will talk themselves into guys like Van Jefferson. The only other player I don't mind captaining here is Sony Michelle. The Rams did change their offense a little bit last week. They ran more jumbo packages. Sony Michelle looked very good, 80 yards after contact against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who actually aren't that bad at rush defense.
Thank you.
So Michelle is the other guy I would gravitate towards. But look, if we like the Rams to score some points, then like Kyler's just going to be throwing more anyways, and I think he will do that. So Kyler Murray is the guy I would captain tonight for sure.
Pierce, he's not even the most expensive player on the board. Cooper Kupp, $1,200 more than Kyler Murray.
I'm going to go with DeAndre Hopkins. Matt alluded to why I like this play, and the key is the low ownership. We all know that Hopkins has great potential, and it's hard to find a plus matchup with really all these good teams and good defenses on the board, but it looks like Hopkins is going to draw a matchup with Darius Williams, who has a 59.6 PFF grade. The Rams are ranked 26th in DVOA against wide receiver number 1. I know Jalen Ramsey's there. People say, Jalen Ramsey, he might shadow, he might be on him. Jalen Ramsey's playing a lot in the slot this year. He's working on, helping out with the rush attack. So I think Hopkins is going to be in a preferred spot, and people are just not going to own him. They don't want to pay the price. They're not sure based on the injury. He didn't put up a massive number last week, which is a good thing. If he would have put up a big number last week, people would be all over him. Yep. He didn't put up a big number because he didn't have to. He played 71% of the snaps, only ran 10 routes, caught his 2 targets, got a touchdown. That's because they blew out Chicago. He didn't have to do anything. And really, that's the perfect situation. He was able to ease back in from the injury. He should be close to full strength in a game where I don't think he's going to be in a tough matchup, whereas the field thinks he is in a tough matchup.
Yeah, familiar foe, Jalen Ramsey, caught 4 of 7 targets against him, 67 yards back in week 4, just north of 10 fantasy points in that game. Best value play in this showdown is who, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, a guy I know Pierce is probably going to talk about, but I'm going to talk about him too because he's just too good a value. It's Rondell Moore. This is a player who obviously, like a few games ago, had a bunch of targets, but he still played over 40% of the snaps with all of the Rams receiving options viable. That's really good. That's really healthy. And again, I just like targeting the Arizona Cardinals receivers here because I think that the Cardinals are going to have to pass the ball in this game. I think that the Rams are going to put pressure on them. And I think you're going to see more than 15 pass attempts. So, ipso facto, I have to like some of these cheaper Arizona Cardinals receivers. And Moore is a play at 2,000. I mean, he's just too cheap. I mean, AJ Green, more than double the salary. People are going to gravitate towards him, I assume, but I don't know how many people will actually, necessarily jump on him here. Like, I'm not expecting massive chalk ownership. So, Rondell Moore has got to be the top value there for me at 2,000.
All right, Pierce, you going to talk about the same guy?
I'm also going to be on Rondell Moore, and you really can't go wrong with any of these cheap value receivers. The game has, a 51.5 over-under. Both these teams routinely score around 30 fantasy points, and we usually come on here and we chase a touchdown from a cheap player. You can do that. But also with Moore, you can also chase that big play, even if he doesn't get in the end zone. He probably likely will get in the end zone. You got a Rams team that ranks 26th in yards after the catch, 19th in missed tackles. That sets up, that possible big game-changing play. Now, I am a little worried that he's going to draw some Jalen Ramsey coverage, but they'll use him, in a gadget-type maneuver, or they'll try to get him in open space. And really, if you're chasing the big play, who else would you go with on this slate at this price? So Moore will be my guy.
Okay, who is your guy for value, Matty?
Yeah, I mean, this is the guy for value. It's Rondell Moore. I don't necessarily like the play for tournament. So if you're playing cash games, I actually think putting Moore at captain is probably the right way to go, because then you can just fit more of the studs in this game. But for GPPs, he's going to be insanely popular. And the reason that this is different than maybe a typical 2K value play is that we have Stafford and Murray and Kupp and Michelle, who all look really good. And if you want to fit at least 2 or 3 of those guys, Moore is really the only player in this game that makes that all work. So I do think he's going to be insanely popular, could potentially be the highest owned player in this entire game. So he is the value play, but I do like the idea of looking to DeAndre Hopkins or Christian Kirk as pivots off of him, and maybe just building a different kind of lineup for tournaments. But as far as a cash game value play, he's very obviously the top guy.
Pierce, let's go over to the DK Sportsbook here. Favorite player prop for tonight's Monday Night Football game is
Matthew Stafford over 280.5 passing yards. His offensive line has played better over the last couple weeks. Arizona has a decent pass rush. They're not great. They have good pass coverage, but it's Matthew Stafford. If he's going to be protected, he should be able to put up plenty of yards in this game. You look at what he's done this season. He's gone over 278 passing yards in 10 of 12 games. He missed in a bad game against San Francisco. He also missed against the Giants, but that's because they blew out the Giants in the first half of that game. Really, if I'm going to boil it down, we see a high projection, what should be a close game. We know that Stafford's going to move the ball likely. Is this going to be a Matthew Stafford game or a Sony Michelle game? Pretty sure the Rams, Cooper Kupp and Stafford will keep the ball in the air.
Yeah, I was going to say the Rams are fine when Stafford is protected and that team can stay balanced. Matt, your favorite player prop tonight is what?
So I'm sort of on the same page. I don't find anything to be crazy value or anything like that, but I do think that just passing in general in this game is undervalued across the board. If I have to pick one, I think Cooper Kupp, his line for receiving yards is just still a little bit too low at 90.5. I'm pretty sure his last game, or his last primetime game at least, he was 99 or 100 as his over-under. I think that's more justifiable, where Kupp is probably a coin flip to go over 100 receiving yards and you're getting him at 90.5. It just seems likely that this game does stay close. It's a good passing environment for both teams if that's the case. And maybe the concern is that there's Chase Edmonds back for Arizona, so you get more running on that side. That slows the game down. But there's no Henderson for the Rams. And last week they didn't need to pass very much because they were playing Jacksonville. But Sony Michelle being there by himself, I think, could mean a little bit more passing. So I do like the Stafford call, but I think Cooper Kupp is a fine call also.
Yeah, that's right. He may be looking for a bit of revenge, too. That was his worst game of the season against the Cardinals back in Week 4. Arizona held him to just 64 yards total. Jeff, favorite player prop tonight, please.
So I'm definitely looking at this game a little bit different than the guys. I really think the Rams are going to try and do what they did last week, and I think they're going to have some success. Again, I mentioned the fact they ran way more jumbo formation with Sony Michelle. It was a clear move in just formations. And I think they're going to try and do that against the Cardinals, who aren't a good rush defense, 4.7 yards per carry. I like the under on a guy like Van Jefferson. I like fading his reception prop. It's at 4.5. I'll take the under 4.5. And again, on the other side, I think that's going to be a little bit more passing for the Cardinals. I like going over on Rondell Moore at 24.5 yards.
All right, dude. Slate approved pick time. Favorite bet for tonight's Monday Night Football game between the Rams and the Cardinals, Jeff?
I'm going to go Rams money line, man. I think the Rams do get a little bit of revenge here. I think they really figured some things out on offense last week, and I think the defense will be up for this Cardinals team. Cardinals still, could be a little bit rusty. The win against the Bears doesn't mean anything. I think the Rams take this one. I like them on the money line.
All right, Pierce, how about you, dude?
Give me the over 51.5. Both these defenses look both these defenses are good. So you got to do some mental gymnastics to kind of make the stats line up for the way that you are picking. So if you want to go unders, that's fine by me, but I don't see a big pressure coming from the Rams pass rush. You give Murray time. He may not put up a huge DFS day, but he'll move the chains. He'll score points. And on the other side, Arizona has a good defense, but they've benefited a lot from turnovers, 9 turnovers in 3 of the last 4. But in those games, they've surrendered a lot of yards. They're going to give up a lot of yards to Stafford. He'll move the ball, and he'll also put points on the board.
Yeah, week 4, line was set at 54 points. They went over that with 57. Matt, bring us home.
So I'm leaning Rams also. I don't know that I'd pick them to win outright. They're getting 2 right now, and I'm a little bit hopeful, maybe wishful thinking that the line can get up towards 3 by tonight. So if the Rams do get to +3, I definitely like that a lot. But even at +2, I think it could be worth a shot here. I think that this really is close to a coin flip game. The Rams and Cardinals are probably pretty even teams, but maybe the Rams are just in a better position, playing better lately. I'm not exactly sure, but I think this game should be close. So if you can get the hook with the field goal, like eventually it may get there later in the night. I think that Arizona is being bet pretty heavily, so that may move the line in that direction. So I'm just leaning +2 now, but if it does get to +3, I would like that a lot.
Yeah, friendly reminder to everyone, too, at home, you got $15 tonight. There is a Monday Night Football Millie Maker, so get in there. First place, taking home $1 million and a ticket to the Tournament of Champions, where another $1 million is on the line if you win that one. All right, guys, thanks so much. Pierce, Jeff, you are free to go. Maddie, stick around. We're going to combine you and Jules next for some NBA building blocks. All right, last block of the show, we are going to spend it talking about NBA building blocks. DraftKings contributor Julian Edlow and Matt Meiselman are back, so need your favorite DFS plays at the following positions for tonight's 9-game NBA slate. Who will you be building around at center, Jules?
Well, we'll get around to talking other positions and talking value on this slate, which it seems like there's plenty of. So you got to spend somewhere, and I will spend on the most expensive player on the slate, that being Nikola Jokic, for $1,200 against the Washington Wizards. Wizards ranked 29th in DraftKings points allowed to the position. You look at Jokic's game log, he's coming off 75, 63, 72 DraftKings points in pretty solid matchups over the last 3 games. I think you got to just pay for points somewhere, and Jokic is going to be the safest place, I guess, for me to buy those points.
All right, you agree there, Matt?
Yeah, I basically agree with the sentiment. I do think if you're looking for a pivot in GPPs, just playing Embiid instead of Jokic could make sense. Jokic is likely to be more popular. I think he's deserving of that, but he is also $1,000 more expensive. And the key for Embiid is without Steven Adams, I think we could see the Grizzlies' interior defense struggle. I still think Jokic most likely outscores Embiid by enough to justify that price tag. But if we do see Jokic wind up being a lot more popular and Embiid is a lot more contrarian, because I don't think there's going to be enough value to fit both guys, I think just swapping over to Embiid is a good move. But either way, I think playing one of these guys, if value opens up at other positions, that's the way to go.
All right, so who's a forward worth building your lineup around tonight, Matt?
So in this Charlotte Hornets team, we have Terry Rozier coming back, and we've kind of had all this forward value with the rest of this team while everyone's been out for COVID protocols. These guys have gotten a little more expensive, like Oubre, Bridges, Cody Martin, but also with Rozier back, they're not going to be asked to do as much. But this Hornets team without basically any centers is just going to go small ball the whole game. So the matchup for Kristaps Porzingis could not be any better. He's at 8K, which I think normally would be about fair, but there's no Luka Doncic playing. So I think Porzingis should be able to take advantage of this spot, and it should be a really high-paced game just with the way the Hornets are playing. And Rozier coming back, I think, just adds even more to that. He's another guy who's going to help with a small ball lineup. Doesn't play that much defense. He's going to score really well, and it just makes for an even higher scoring game. So I think it's a really good spot for Porzingis.
All right, Jules, how about you, man?
Yeah, it's hard to find a place really other than Porzingis to spend at forward. You keep scrolling through looking for a name, and it's kind of a tough slate. Like you go to the Celtics side of things, you got Jalen Brown coming back into the mix, which makes it tougher for him and Tatum against a solid Bucks team to find value. Matt hit on the situation with the Hornets getting bodies back, which generally means guys are overpriced. So really, it's Porzingis and or value for me. So you've got, I mean, Brandon Boston is probably a guy we'll touch on in value. He somehow remains 3K with Paul George still out of the lineup. And then Marvin Bagley kind of back from the dead at 3,800 with no Rashawn Holmes. I'm not a huge Marvin Bagley guy, but the minutes are there. So once I get, Porzingis at a really fair price into my lineup, it's all value for me. There's really no other building block or star to build around there in my mind.
Hey, Bagley got his first start of the season, right? Saturday against Cleveland. I'm looking here. Last 4 games, averaging 11.5 points, 8.5 boards. He's posted a couple double-doubles. What about in the guard department? Who's got building block potential, Julian?
We're sticking with the Mavericks, and it's Jalen Brunson, whether you're going to play him with or without Kristaps Porzingis. 5 games this season without Doncic on the floor, 17.8 points, 7.6 assists, 5.8 rebounds for Jalen Brunson. He just takes over that ball handling role for the Mavericks and does pretty well with it. So against Charlotte, at home, pretty decent matchup, but it's really just the volume. And with him priced in just kind of a mid-tier, high 5,000s, it couldn't be a better spot to roster Jalen Brunson, even with Kristaps Porzingis.
Yeah, in 7 starts this season, he's averaging more than 20 points a night. Matt, what guard do you like?
Yeah, so Brunson could be like 70, 80, even 90% tonight. And I still think you just do it because 5,800 is just not close to what he should cost with Luka not playing, and especially in a good matchup against Charlotte. Like Brunson's probably a $7,500 or more player without Luka on the team, and then you get a positive matchup and he's only 58. So I think you just play Brunson and worry about differentiating elsewhere. But I will just say, I think there's a chance that Steph Curry doesn't play tonight. I don't necessarily believe Steve Kerr when he says Steph will be out there. They're playing tomorrow against the Knicks and 3-point record and all of that. I think everyone knows the narratives, but Jordan Poole's 5,900. And if Steph doesn't play, I think Poole being right at the same price as Brunson probably doesn't get that much attention. So I like Poole too if Steph doesn't play.
All right, so I think both of you guys have mentioned multiple times already the amount of value on this slate, this 9-game NBA slate tonight, the 13th day of December of the year 2021. So if I ask you, can you build around someone who has value on this slate? Matt, you would say what?
So DeAndre Ayton is questionable, and I don't know if we'll get that news in time to make a reaction before lock. And the Suns and Clippers also play at 10:30, which is a total island game. This actually happened the other night. McGee was $3,400 as DeAndre Ayton's backup and put up nearly 50 fantasy points with only a 14% ownership number in the largest tournament because no one had the ability to swap to him. So you really needed to plan ahead if you wanted to play McGee. Fortunately, we have guys like Brandon Boston, who Julian mentioned before, where if you put McGee in the utility spot, you can just take him instead if Ayton's in. But McGee at $4,000, like if Ayton's not there, I think he's a better value than even Brunson. So we don't know that news yet. We may not know it until well after lock, but I think JaVale McGee potentially winds up being the best value play on the slate.
Jules, hook me up here, dude.
Yeah, Matt hit on it. When you have the ability, we can talk about the values, whatever. Brandon Boston, Jalen Brunson, Marvin Bagley, they're great, but what makes them better than, an 80, 90% Jalen Brunson is having a 14% JaVale McGee. So, yeah, you want to keep your utility open to react to news tonight is the best value that you can possibly get. Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot is another guy, TLC on Atlanta, a name you can throw out there. But we've touched on a lot. Here, I'll give you a value to fade.
Ooh.
Xavier Tillman is a guy that's been doing really well, but he's getting limited minutes, and his matchup is going to be Joel Embiid. He could be off the floor in foul trouble 4 minutes into the game, and you've got a guy you think is going to go 8x, and he winds up getting like 12 DraftKings points against Embiid.
All right, excellent. Thank you for doing that. Way to go above and beyond, Jules. This is why.
Yeah, extra credit.
Dude, this is
I'm
why
that
we
guy.
love you. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Our producer is loving you for that. Let's wrap things up, though. Let's go to the DK Sportsbook. Jules, what's your favorite bet on the DK Sportsbook tonight?
Yeah, it's a weird card. It's, again, going to be a lot of, what ifs. Why are the Warriors such short favorites coming off a loss in Indy? Well, maybe Matt's right. Maybe Curry is sitting. If Curry plays and you can get the Warriors -3.5, I guess it's a little bit of a trappy spot off a loss in the sandwich game coming to New York, and Curry probably breaks the record in New York, but I'll be interested if Curry's in. You got the Celtics coming home after a long road trip, and Jalen Brown coming back. For me, it's going to be the late game again. If Ayton plays, then we don't get the JaVale McGee value, but I do very much want the Suns -3 against the Clippers, who should be without Paul George. So that is again, a lot of moving parts here. The spot that I've circled is Suns -3 with George out and Ayton in. We'll see if it comes to fruition.
All right, Maddie, how about you, dude?
Yeah, I think Julian would probably be able to make this pick for me because he knows where I'm going to go. But I like the Pacers regardless. Like, I think that even if Steph plays, the Warriors are just not as good as they've played this year. I probably said this on like every segment and every show I've been on for the last 2 months. I think the Warriors are a top 5 team in the NBA, but just barely. And I think the Pacers are one of the more undervalued teams. They've had some ups and downs, but I think people are buying too much into this idea they're going to blow up the roster, make trades, whatever. Like, it's actually a talented team, and I think they're a low-end playoff team. The Warriors are in the midst of this road trip, and I do think that matters also. And with Steph in, I still think this is pretty close to a 50-50 game. So I would be happy to take +3.5 or +4 because it probably does bump up a little if Steph does wind up being in. But if Steph's out, like, this is one of the best bets of the season because in that scenario, if you can get the Pacers at +3 with no Curry, I think they deserve to be 5-point favorites, if not more, if Curry's out of this game. So this could be a wild one for Indiana. Like, they've let me down many, many times in spots where they should win, like playing the Lakers when they're shorthanded, things like that. But if you take Curry out of this game, like, I think the Pacers win easily.
Pacers
This segment is an excellent example of why you download the DK Live app.
Yeah.
Get all this news and then go rush to place your NBA bets because that's what you base it all on.
Yeah, man. +140 on the money line. That's the Pacers tonight against the Warriors. So, good stuff, guys. Thanks for your help. You guys did multiple segments for that. We really appreciate you. Everyone watching right now, you can stay tuned for the Madden Sims. That starts with the Jets and the Lions at noon. That sounds thrilling. Check out the slate, though, at 5 o'clock Eastern Time for more NFL talk with Glash Daddy, Jeff Ulrich, and Mr. Matty Meiselman.